now want to welcome our next speaker, Patricio Vargas.
Y ahora la conexión se establece con Jacksonville, Estados Unidos, conocida por ser un centro de negocios regional con muchos museos y actividades culturales. Desde esta ciudad nos acompaña Patricio Vargas. Él es Google Developer Expert e ingeniero de software y está con nosotros para enseñarnos a usar librerías en un Angular NX Monorepo.
Hi, Patricio. How are you? Very well. And you? Thank you for inviting me today. Well, so tell me, how do you feel? Nervous, excited, happy? Well, I'm a bit less nervous now. My computer literally 1 minute before giving the presentation decided to give me problems. I had to restart it, but it's already working fine, so I'm more than ready. Very well. Tell me, how are things in Jacksonville? Well, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm assuming your question has to do with the COVID situation. Well, here it seems people are much more relaxed and they're obsessed with going to the beach. I live 10 minutes away from the beach, and you go out on the streets, and it would seem that COVID never came or never appeared. I mean, and it's really one of the cities with the largest number of contagions in the United States. So I always go out, I use my face mask. I was even thinking of wearing it for this presentation. Yes, it's important for you to take care of yourself because we need you for a long time now. Yeah, a few more talks, many, many more. So, Pato, thank you for being here with us, and I give you the floor now. Excellent. Thank you. Well, hi everyone. Friends, parceros, parceras, carnales, cuates, all of these are just slang words. Welcome to NGCOM 2020. We're hearing Adriana and Jorge. Okay, so very well. Thank you very much for being here, coming back. And I want to talk today about using libraries in an Angular NX monorepo because we're building Angular applications. We always want to know whether our application will be maintainable, if it's going to last, if we're going to be able to make it grow and develop it even more. So when you're working with Angular applications, you have two types of shared codes. For example, the shared codes go well from CCCS, components, interfaces, services, images, and much more. But there are two types of shared codes. The first type is the one shared only via applications. That means that the code will be shared within an application and you cannot leave the application. The second type is the code shared in projects with libraries. I am going to show you how a shared code looks like when it's via app. As you can see here, we see a folder here, shared. It's what it reads, and it reads components, containers, models, packs, modules, etc. This code that you see here within this folder is the one I'm using to share it within one same application. So underscore it, write it down because it's only for an application. I cannot share it, I cannot get it out of it. And obviously this is the structure I'm giving it. You can give it the structure you want and depending on how it adapts to your project. But the most important part of this presentation is not the code shared per applications, but the topic of libraries. So let's go to the topic of libraries and modules. When you have a code that will be shared in applications like services or components, you can do it through Angular libraries. So where can the libraries live? Well, if all developers in a company are working on the same project, regardless of how large it is, a one monorepo could be a good option. If developers are working on several different projects in teams in different locations and other applications, possibly monorepo might not be the best option, and you would rather use repository npm. So I'm going to give you an example of a scenario where to use a library. Okay, let's pretend you're working for a corporate area, and for the corporate area, you or company, you have different departments. You have resources, you have IT, you have finance department, and all these departments require you to have their own Angular application. So they are obviously under the same organization, and you're going to have to share a code, and the code depends on the service. It has to have security within the company. It has to have everyone have the same navigation bars, the same state, so in order to maintain the branding, etc. So that could be a good scenario to use libraries. But if you are in a team, for example, if it's a consulting team, and let's say within the team you have a project working for a school, and another one you're working for a bank, you're going to use the NPM repository. A good way to structure it and understand it better is viewing it like an organization. If it's everything within the organization, it'll be monorepo and it'll be easier. So the shared project code in projects. Let's suppose we're using libraries in an NPM repository. As you can see there, within my repository, I have there three libraries, and these libraries, you're going to be able to use them in different Angular applications. You can use them, you can combine them. An advantage or a disadvantage with this is that you have to have a private NPM for the entire organization, so that, for example, let's say Carlos lives in Kuwait, and he wants to use your code. He has an Angular application, no problem. That's why you have a public NPM, but you can also use it through a private one, and it costs. So take that into account. Now let's talk about the good things of libraries. When we're building a library, we need to think with the mentality that they need to be used outside our libraries and in other projects. So what's a good thing of using libraries? Good thing is that you can publish and share these libraries with other teams or projects. So if you're going to use, I don't know, code once, maybe you won't need to use it in an NPM. You will simply have it locally in your application, and that's it. But let's say not everything is beautiful with libraries. It also has some disadvantages. So let's look at the bad things about libraries. One of the disadvantages is that when you inject your library into your project, you will have to make reviews. Let's say I am working in an SGS library like Sending Class Works. Every time I use it, I'll have to review it. I am going to have to change the version of the library. If it's version 1, maybe I will need to change it to 1.2 or to 2 or to 3, 4, 5, whatever might be applicable. And you will need to notify your users that you just updated the library and ask them to test it, etc. So that's one disadvantage. The other disadvantage is that you need to keep your project updated with the latest versions of the libraries. If I'm using RxJS, I have the obligation to keep it updated with respect to the latest versions. I'm just mentioning one library that you might be familiar with, but that happens with everything. So let's imagine someone finds a bug in one of the versions of the library. So in order for you to use the library without the bug, let's say it's a security bug, you will have to to update your library project in order to be able to see the changes. So that's another disadvantage. So to such end, we have the concept of Angular monorepos. What's a monorepo? According to Wikipedia, that's what they tell us. I just did copy paste, and there's the definition. It's a form of building applications where all your code lives under the same repository. All your projects will use the same version of the code. Okay, so let's talk about the advantages of the Angular monorepo. One of the advantages of using monorepo is the version of your library will be the same for all your applications. Why? Because you will no longer place your shared code in the NPM. Simply refer to your project of monorepo. When you update a library, it will be updated to all projects. Everyone will have the same version, and you don't have versions 1.0 and you just change, and everyone will have the version updated, and you won't have conflicts between the versions of the libraries. So it's good for applications containing several projects. That could be a good application, but it's difficult to use it in massive projects where teams are separated and not having too much communication. Companies like Facebook, Angular, the Angular team with Google, for example, because all modern web projects use Angular. So every time the new version comes out, for example, number 10, it was just released. Check it out. Before making it for everyone to use, they test it, and it is tested throughout all applications. And with just one which doesn't pass the test, it automatically has to be checked. They need to look at the problem, they fix it, they test again, and once everything is okay, they can open it to the public, right? Careful when using libraries. I've seen many projects that have to use NPM packages for their libraries, and that's the best option to share codes in Angular projects, and that's okay. We're not judging everyone. We're all peers, cuates, as they say in Mexico. But the problem is that to use libraries in NPM can create a lot of code function or problems. One of them could be that each library has to have their own CD, CI individual CDCI. Each CDCD has to handle the version of the library, and you have to make sure you're using the right version of the library so that there's continuous integration. That's what it means, CDCD. So for each problem, there's a solution for every problem. So who can defend us? The Chapulín Colorado, definitely not. You all know how he is. He doesn't like Guasaca, so he won't help us. But there is someone who will, and it's NX, superhero NX. So NX is a super tool which will help us work with monorepos. And the cool thing about it's that it's not only working for Angular, it works for Go, it works for Angular. My friend Vivan made it work for Go, so great for him. So I also want to thank the next team. These are some of the collaborators. There are obviously many more. We could take a picture of all of them. So special thanks to the little pig, the pet. It's the pet of Jeff Cross, one of the founders. So let's use the hands in chat, and I'll teach you how to transform an application in a monorepo project with its Angular applications, how to start using your code as libraries within a monorepo. So the first thing we're going to do, as you can see, I already have the project created within Next, no problem. As you can see within Next, when you generate your workspace, it will generate these files, no problem. You go into click on command line and it will generate it. Now, within your workspace, you're going to have a section that reads application. applications. In this case, I have an application called Blog. It's an Angular application, and in this part, I have the folder which reads app, and here I have the components, just the way you've seen it in any Angular application. There's no magic in here. There's nothing different. So as you can see, I have this, and I also have one part that reads libraries. And as you can see, everything is within the same repository. If I minimize it here, as you can see, you here see libraries, applications, and all the files that will be used globally. So if I go to blog, as you can see, I have the cost interface, which is a very simple interface, nothing, beyond normal. The code of my components, it's a code that you might have seen in any Angular application. I have the router name. So what I want to say is that there's nothing uncommon here. If you think I'm hiding something, no, it's all very common. So what I'm going to do is, so the concept of libraries with Monorepo, something that is very cool about that is that you not only have to cope with the fact that you can only share an Angular code, you cannot, as I was saying, from CS images, JavaScript. So the first thing we're going to do is convert this interface into a library so that other applications within Monorepo can use, or up until backend applications. That's a super cool thing about it, because you use, for example, Taxper, you use Angular interfaces. The same thing with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a library for my interface, and it's going to be called NXG, which means generate, and then I'm going to use the normal schematic, and I'm going to write workspace, and I here specify that I'm going to create a library and give it the name POS. So it generated my library, as you can see. If I go to the libraries folder, I see it created here, many libraries, we can talk about it. And here, all these files are generated thanks to horrible schematics created for Linux. And here you have a barrow. It is already exporting the interface. And as you can see, it's marking a problem. Well, the reason is because this host file has nothing in it. So it doesn't really know what to export. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this interface that I had already created, and I'm going to incorporate it into my library. So save, click save, and then I go over here, and this problem, this interface that I have over here is being used in different parts of my Angular application. As you can see, one of those parts was my post detail components. And what I'm going to do here is very easy. I already incorporated import, and so I have nothing to worry about there. Now I am going to tell my code I am going to use it. gconf, and then I'm going to write post, because that's the name of my library, and it's marking. Okay, let's see. One thing that you need to know is that when you're using libraries made many times, if you see VS Code, if for some reason you cannot detect this, you have to restart the VS Code. I'm letting you know because it's a very common problem. So let's open it again, so that when you're using this, you avoid that problem. And as you can see, it disappeared. It's not a problem with an X, but with base scores, unfortunately. So with this line of code, I am going to go to another component using this interface. I will change it. As I wanted to show you is to see how easy it is to use these within a monorepo. So if I go to the component in the post page, in this part, as you can see, I have an image, I have an anchor type, and I have an MG4. So what I want to do is, let's suppose there will be some other parts of my application where I have to reuse this part of the code. So I'll take this code, I save it, and then we go to create a new library. So we will write an XG at normal, and here, careful, it won't be workspace, it's going to be Angular. So it can create an Angular library, I'll put me, and then the name of my library will be UI. Enter, and here it gives me the option to select the type of state. I'm going to select SAS. If you select CCS, that's the best option in my opinion. And if you don't agree with me, we will no longer be friends. So here you can see the library was already generated. So we go back to the libraries folder. As you can see here, we have my UI. That's my new library. If I expand it, I click on source. And as you can see, it generated an Angular module. Do you see anything different in this code module compared to the other code when it's on a repo? No, right? It's exactly the same. So you don't have to worry about syntaxes or anything. So we need to learn to use commands created by normal and how to structure your application. So once you've created this module, what you need to do is you have to create a component within your library. So I'm going to click NX. First, I'm going to clean up the terminal. Then it's G to generate a C, which is a component. I'm going to write post, and then I'm going to specify the project. In this case, the project would be UI, and I'm going to specify that it has to give me accessibility to export. So it was generated, and as you can see, the component is here. If I open it, we see it here. Once again, it's nothing outside, your regular application, no trick, no magic. So what I'm going to do now is wait for the code that I want to reuse in my components. In this case, it's this G4. And as you can see, it needs a post. So the first thing I need to do is I have to go to my component, and what are we going to do? Syntax is you've already seen it. I declare my post, I do this, and here it's already importing the input. Excellent. And now what I want to do is use my post library. We have already seen it. I already taught you how to use it. And in order for you to see it's real, as my good friend Tobias would say, it's 100% real, no fake. I'm going to eliminate this interface that we have already been using. And in order for you to see it's not fake, it's there. Now what I need to do, I almost forgot, take the CSS on this side, and I save it, and I inject it into my component. There. I didn't copy it well. Wait. There it is. Ready. So it seems everything's closed. Perfect. So now what I have to do is, as you can see, my post component is already my module. Now what I need to do is to use it in order to be able to reuse it in the different parts where I want to use it. So we inject it in our app module. So what you need to do here is you go to module, you click import, and then you click from. Now what do you think it's going to be? ngconf? No, because remember the post part is the name of my library. In this case, it's UI, right? So ngconf UI Perfect. And once again, the same problem I was telling you about is arising. I don't detect, so no problem. All I need to do is restart his code. But before you do that, you need to take into account that if we go to our post library, we see our code and we see what it is using. Grab link, and just like any module that where you're using Angular dependencies, we need to inject them. So in my UI module, I go over here and let's inject it. So import, I think router, I think it's router modules. If it's not this one, let me know because I can't remember. And then Angular and here router. We'll see if it's this one, my lucky day. And now we'll add it to imports. No? Perfect. Everything fine. And what else? What else? Oh, obviously we want to use our component as any Angular application. What do we need to do? If we go to selector, we can see how to use this part over here. And as you can see, my component is post. I copy this, no problem. I go to the post page, which is where I was using it, and then I use it just like any other component that you're injecting into HTML, and it will take a post, which is the input, and our data here will pass it and ready. So what I'm going to do now is later on I will have to restart my VS Code in order for this error to disappear. Let's do it quickly. Here it is again. I go to ngconf. So as you can see, the error disappeared. Excellent. So if something like this ever happens to you, don't think you did something wrong. Don't, confuse yourself. Just restart it. And if it doesn't work, yes, you have a problem. So let's see if I didn't break anything because we're live. And typically when you're live, something goes wrong. So let's see. Let's check. It's making the view. It's viewing. Let's see. It looks promising. So let's go over here, and there it is. NGConf Colombia. There you see the gods of reggaeton. There are more gods. I was not able, I didn't have time to incorporate them all. So now I can do click, voila, and there you have it. The song that I love. And well, one more thing, if we have time, Nicolas can tell me if I can work on one more piece of the code. If not, no problem. Yeah, he gave me the go, so great. One thing that is super important is we're going to go to this part of the code. What I'm going to do is I will now convert my service into a library. Sorry, to use it into a library. You can create your own library or you can inject it into an existing one. So in this case, it's G for generate, S for service, and I'm going to call it one. And I have to specify in which project. In this project will be UI. I will add it. My service was already created. Excellent. So now what I'm going to do, just the same way, this is my service, the one I was using priorly. So I'm going to copy everything with the name because they're called exactly the same. And I'm going to go to the lower part to the service I just created within my UI library. So I go to the blog service. As you can see, it has the same name. So I delete it. I inject the code. There's everything okay. There it is. And what I'm going to do is reuse it. One thing that you have to be attentive to is that when you create services, please don't get confused. It won't add it to the barrel. As you can see, it's not here. So you have to do it manually. This is something related to an X. It's as easy as doing this. Listo calisto, ready, as we would say in Mexico. So you can use this service anywhere in your monorepo. So let's go to the details. And so now instead of using the static file here, we'll do ngconf UI, and now we'll go to the other component, and boom. So let's test it. It's already being built. Let's see if we see any error. I just realized that a while ago when I tested it, no error came up. So, oh my God, challenge. So now, excellent, successful. Let's see if it's true, if they're not deceiving me. Oh, okay. So there it is. Finally, the last thing I want to teach you or to show you is that, or to share with you, is that we're already translating documentation on Angular IO in Spanish into Spanish. So you're welcome to collaborate not only with your experience working on this type of project, but it will help you understand Angular more because when you read and you translate, that helps you understand better. So you can write to us via this address or to my Twitter here. And if you want to know more about the next, you can go into an next official page or follow my tutorials. I will teach you step by step, line by line, how to build the application and create it. So there it is. That was what I had to share with you. I hope you liked it, and thank you for attending. Nicolas, everything okay? Thank you very much, Patricio, for this excellent presentation. You can tell that you love reggaeton, right? Yes, the last part, I did it with reggaeton, and I asked you to use it